welcome to the programme. I'm Helena Humphrey. Good to have you with us. We're going to begin the programme. We've got some breaking news coming in from the Middle East, and that is Palestinian sources in Gaza alleging heavy loss of life after an Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City. Now, the Hamas-controlled Civil Defence Agency says that at least 90 people were killed and dozens wounded when the Daraj district was bombed. And of course, we are continuing to follow those developments. With me in the studio to talk more about this is Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic. Mohamed, good to have you with us. What is the latest that we're learning at this hour?
What we know from different sources that coming from Gaza and from other outlets that has got access to Gaza and footage from Gaza, that the Israeli airplanes striked a school, and in particularly a prayer area in a school early this morning, causing around 100 deaths and a bigger number of injured. The school was inhabited with more than 5,000 people who were evacuated to the school. The school was in Al-Daraj quarter in the city of Gaza. And apparently Israel targeted the prayer area while the people in the school were performing the morning prayer. And I anticipate that if Israel wanted to target members of Hamas, I think the best way of targeting them is during prayer, as they would be performing the prayer at this time.
So, Mohamed, just to be clear from what you're saying, the people who were inside that school, people who have been evacuated, who have fled other areas and using that school to seek shelter.
Indeed, and this happened many times. The local authorities in Gaza said that since the start of this war in October the 7th, there are 170 shelter positions were targeted. Before this school, Israel targeted Al-Mawasi area, where they advised people to shelter in Al-Mawasi when they wanted to target Khan Yunis. So it became a little bit a pattern from the Israeli forces to target the areas that the people would evacuate to. I think anticipating that members of Hamas would be amongst these people in this evacuating area. The scenes that I saw in other outlets are really horrifying. Bodies are everywhere. Bodies are unidentified. Israel, in many occasions, gave warning to people before striking certain places. In this occasion, they didn't. And the tragedy is not only the 100 people and their families that died, but the tragedy also would be on over 4,000 people who were in the school, who evacuated the school, and they have nowhere to go.
Mohamed, as you say, this is the second time in 2 days that schools have been attacked in Gaza. Israel insists that they are targeting Hamas militants. I just wonder, in these attacks, have we had any confirmation that Hamas militants are among the dead?
We would never know if anybody from Hamas amongst the dead, but what we know for sure that this school were inhabited with around 5,000 people who sought shelter to be in the school. No confirmation from the ground about that, and no comment from Israel at the moment about what happened. But what normally Israel would say afterwards, either the Hamas was using the school as a headquarter or a base for them, or that they were targeting a top leader of Hamas. This happened before in that fashion, if you remember, in the beginning of the war in Al-Ma'madani hospital, when the hospital was targeted, and Israel said at that time that happened by mistake, and they launched an investigation with that. But with this war entering more than 10 months so far, and we witnessed more than and 40,000 people killed in this war. All the people in Gaza are really eager to have a ceasefire, to have an end of this war, and we anticipate that there must be, or there would be, a negotiation round in Cairo or Doha on Thursday. The people in Gaza are tired, are exhausted, are shattered, they lost their families, and also the hostages, the Israeli hostages in Gaza want to return back to their homes. Everybody wants this war to end.
Mohamed, I just want to bring our viewers back up to date with the situation that we are currently following at this hour, and that is that news coming from the Middle East that Palestinian sources in Gaza are alleging heavy loss of life after an Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City. These are live pictures that we're currently looking at. Well, the Hamas-controlled Civil Defense Agency says that at least 90 people were killed, dozens wounded when the Daraj district was bombed. Coming back over to you then, Mohamed, we were just talking about the context that all of this exists in, not least the humanitarian situation in Gaza at a time when there are these broader concerns about the possibility of a wider war in the Middle East. But talking about the situation specifically in Gaza, that humanitarian situation remains very difficult, doesn't it? Also traces of the wild polio virus found in wastewater, according to the World Health Organization this week.
Yeah, the humanitarian situation in Gaza, I would say, one of the worst in the whole world. People in Gaza do not have clean water, they do not have enough food, they eat the animals' food. There are lots of diseases because of this situation. The garbage management is not possible at the moment. As you said, not only polio. We had reports with BBC Arabic about liver diseases, and children do not get their vaccinations. Mothers, they have difficult labor and their babies are miniaturized. Can you imagine 2 million people in a siege? They do not have a place to go, they do not have a toilet to go to even. The situation in Gaza is very dangerous. The people who are dying from diseases and hunger more than the people who are dying from the Israeli shelling. Very little aid is coming to Gaza. Very little hospitals are functioning. Children are losing their school year because they don't go to school all of this time. The situation in Gaza is really, really dire. Everybody wants to see this war to end. And funnily enough, that we were anticipating Iran or Hezbollah to strike Israel. We were waiting for that for many days. Now we see Israel striking Gaza, striking Syria, striking South Lebanon, striking in West Bank, in 4 fronts at the same time as preemptive strikes before anything else to happen.
And we'll touch a little bit more on that complex picture in a moment, but something I did want to ask about with regards to those long-term health consequences that you start to see when you have a conflict which runs in, as you say now, to the 10-month mark, the fact that people haven't been able to get access to medication and so on that they need. When it comes to polio, for example, WHO has said that it wants to gain access to Gaza to carry out this immunisation. I just wonder what you've been hearing about health workers, aid workers being able to get access to Gaza where they need it. What are you hearing about that?
We have some evidence that some health officials would have some access to Gaza. I spoke to some charities here in the UK who told me they managed to fund some doctors to get into Gaza for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, and they come back. World Health Organization, as you said, sometimes they have some officials can go to Gaza, but the biggest organization that is overseeing what's happening in Gaza was the UNRWA. It has the biggest funding, it has the biggest facilities, it had schools, hospitals, and many things. Now Israel is considering the UNRWA as a terrorist group. They are considering some members of UNRWA participated in the 7th of October attack. So without this UNRWA working in Gaza, is very difficult to cover everything. So yes, there is some access, but it's not enough. There are 2 million people who need hospitals, many people injured, many people has diseases. I saw reports, and we broadcasted the reports in BBC Arabic with people with diabetes that they do not have their medication, people with high blood pressure, they don't have their medication. Medications are not does not exist in Gaza. So, officials without equipment and medications wouldn't do much, would they?
Yeah, indeed. Cancer patients as well, kidney dialysis and so on. Well, for people who are just joining us, the situation that we are currently looking at is some breaking news that we've had coming in here at the BBC with Palestinian sources in Gaza alleging heavy loss of life after an Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City. Now, the Hamas-controlled Civil Defense Agency says at least 90 people were killed, dozens wounded when the Daraj district was bombed. We are discussing it here with BBC Arabic's Mohamed Taha. Mohamed, talking about the military and the political situation in all of this after touching on that humanitarian situation. Of course, we know this past week that Yahya Sinwar has been named as the head of Hamas, and you were talking about, of course, this fatigue from civilians, this desperation for peace and a ceasefire. But I just wonder what your assessment is with regards to how likely that is for an end to this conflict, also for the release of hostages as well now who've been held in Gaza for a very long time, in light of the fact that Sinwar now heads up Hamas.
So everyone is in positive atmosphere that this new round of negotiations that the United States put a specific date for it to start on Thursday, that this new round would bring peace. Each and every time this happens, people are really looking forward that this would result positive results, would result a ceasefire, would result the end of this war. The United States is really keen for this round to succeed. They want to keep the superiority, the military superiority of Israel intact, as Israel now in a superior situation after they managed to kill Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, kill Fuad Shukr, the leader of Hezbollah, and even last night Israel killed also Samuel al-Gamal, and Hamas leader in southern Lebanon. So Israel is obviously in a superior military situation. We see the situation in Gaza. At the moment, there are 2/3 of the buildings in Gaza, according to the UN, are destroyed. So the United States would say, now Israel in a superior situation. Let's go to negotiations with this spirit. Let's go to negotiations maybe to delay any strike from Hezbollah or from Iran. Let's go to these negotiations before any escalation to the situation happens. Let's go to these negotiations to avoid any more bad economic situation in Israel or in the region because of this anticipation of widening the war. Let's go to these negotiations to end maybe the Biden term in glory and show him as he managed to do something really good and peace in the region. So everyone is really want this round to to succeed. Whether this round will be led by Sinwar or not, of course Israel is not happy of having Sinwar as a head of Hamas. He's obviously a hardliner. Ismail Haniyeh was much more soft on the negotiations, and we heard last night that the military wing of Hamas approved or inaugurated Yahya Sinwar as a leader of the movement. Now Israel has to face this situation and has to deal with this matter. But at the end of the day, we always hear reports from Israel, and our correspondent in Jerusalem, Mohamed, always is saying that Benjamin Netanyahu, as a head of the Israeli government, he is not willing to reach a deal. He is the man who wants this war to continue to protect his political future, and he wouldn't ever accept a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza or a permanent ceasefire to stop fighting Hamas.
This is the question, isn't it? Because, for example, the War Cabinet can speak about the eradication of Hamas. You can see that pressure coming from Washington, particularly President Biden, looking to his legacy, would very much like to see peace there in the Middle East. But, you know, what is the understanding about what essentially Netanyahu will want to see when there are people, critics of Netanyahu, say that this war is also linked to his political survival instincts?
Apparently, the analysts and the reports that coming from Israel is saying that Benjamin Netanyahu and the right wing in his government, led by his finance minister Smotrich and his security advisor Ben Gvir, or the minister of security Ben Gvir, they want this war to continue endlessly. They do not want this war to end at all. They want to continue the presence in Gaza, keep fighting Hamas forever, keep fighting in the West Bank forever. They want to see the scenes in the West Bank as similar to the scene in Gaza. They want to launch a full war against Hezbollah. They want to strike Beirut. They want to continue the war also against the Houthis in Yemen. They want to continue striking Syria. They want to eliminate Iran. They do not want a deal to happen between Iran and the United States, as they see any peace between the United States and Iran is harmful to Israel's security. They want to see the nuclear facilities of Iran destroyed. They want a war between the United States and Iran. And analysts are saying that this right-wing part of the Israeli government are keen to involve the United States in a full war in the Middle East. And we can see some signs of this happening by the United States sending more aeroplane carriers, by sending the F-22 Raptor to the region, by reorganizing their troops. If Iran would really strike Israel hard, the United States might respond.
Well, let's just update our viewers on the breaking news that we are currently covering at this hour. That news coming in with Palestinian sources in Gaza alleging a heavy loss of life after an Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City. There you are seeing live pictures of a hospital, the Al-Aqsa hospital there. So there is that heavy loss of life that is being reported after that Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City, with the Hamas-controlled Civil Defense Agency saying that at least 90 people were killed and dozens wounded when the Daraj district was bombed. We are discussing these latest developments in the studio here with Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic. Mohamed, the backdrop to all of this, and I think it's fair to say what so many of us have been watching this past week, was the possibility of an attack from Iran, which has vowed revenge after the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, and potentially that attack coming through Iran's proxies as well. Do we have any indication, any understanding what that could look like, what Israel is bracing for?
We had a guest also with BBC Arabic in the last hours from Iran who said why we are rushing Iran for a response. Iran is studying its response carefully, and it will respond at the right time, and it will hit the right target. It looks like Iran is very keen to strike, whether they are preparing their strike, whether they are waiting the right moment. But also in the last hours we saw Iran intensifying their military and intensifying their missile systems, and they are doing drills also on that. It looks to us that Iran is preparing for a strike, and all the reports that coming from Hezbollah, from Houthis in Yemen, from Iran, from the Iraqi resistance, the Islamic resistance in Iraq, all of the indications coming from these different countries is showing that this response, this revenge might be coordinated between all of these parties. That's why we can see this panic in Israel, if I may say. There are many airliners canceled their flights to Israel, many of them from from Europe and from the United States. There are around 100,000 Israeli are stranded outside. They cannot come back to the country. There is a high alert in Israel. There is the deficit in the Israeli budget because they are stretching their abilities so much and directing more finance to the army. This hole or this deficit in the budget reached $44 billion. So we can see a scene in the region that anticipating a coordinated revenge from Iran and their allies in the region. But the question is when this response will happen, and will it hit civilians or not, and what would be the Israeli response for that? That's why the Security Council in Israel took a decision to do a preemptive attack on Hezbollah. They did it last few hours. It wasn't targeted Hezbollah, it targeted Lebanon. It killed a leader in Hamas in southern Lebanon, Samir al-Gamal. And these preemptive attacks are continued. I put this attack on this prayer area in the school that left 100 people at least died, according to the authorities in Gaza, in that context of the preemptive attack from Israel.
All right, many unanswered questions at the moment, but covering all those latest developing elements there for us. Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic, thank you so much. And do stay with us for continued coverage of that, because just to remind our viewers, that breaking news that we are covering at this hour, and these are live pictures of a hospital, the Al-Aqsa hospital there, with Palestinian sources in Gaza alleging a heavy loss of life. That's after an Israeli strike on a school in Gaza, with the Hamas Civil Defense Agency saying at least 90 people killed, dozens wounded as well, when the Daraj district was bombed. And of course, we will continue to keep you up to date with all of the latest developments in that story. Well, we turn now to events in Russia, and Moscow is introducing strict new security measures in 3 regions bordering Ukraine in response to this week's surprise incursion by Ukrainian forces into the Kursk region. Now, there are also concerns from the UN Nuclear Agency, which has urged both sides to exercise maximum restraint as fighting moves closer to a power plant. Well, fighting's been raging since Ukraine's army launched its surprise incursion this week, with reports suggesting they could be operating up to 30 kilometres inside of Russia, with intense fighting close to the town of Sudzha. We can speak now to Jay Schnell, a journalist in Kyiv. A warm welcome to you. Thank you for being with us. Just to begin with, that surprise counter-offensive which we saw this week inside Russia, what is the latest that you can tell us on that?
I think you said it correctly. It's definitely a surprise, both to me, a lot of my colleagues, and many of the Ukrainian people. It's very much a testament to the operational resilience of Ukraine. I'm quite surprised to see this kind of attack occur. I can honestly say that morale is slightly lifted since this attack has occurred, but once again lowered by the recent attack in Konstantinivka, where there was a result of 14 casualties yesterday when the strike happened on a market in eastern Ukraine.
Jay, I'm interested in what you think that the Ukrainian military may be looking to achieve here, whether this could be an effort to gain ground, were there to be negotiations, for example, or perhaps whether this is something more symbolic, a message, for example, from the Ukrainian military.
Whether it's a message to provoke, I mean, I think Ukrainians have been provoked for, well, since 2014, but since the full-scale invasion, many civilian attacks have could be called provoking to the Ukrainian population. What does it mean? Do I think that it's maybe a message of fear? No, I presume that it is strategic attack, likely towards infrastructure that's attacking Ukraine. Is there the potential of more of these attacks to occur within Russian territory? Who's to say? But if they do, most likely, I believe they will occur with the main target being those zones where they are striking and attacking Ukraine from.
Well, let's just remind our viewers in all of this, of course, we know the Ukrainian military using weapons given to it from Western allies. Do you think there's the possibility for escalation here? What kind of response are you anticipating from President Putin?
What kind of response to anticipate from President Putin? I mean, we've seen a response yesterday with that attack in Konstantinivka where there was 14 casualties. I believe there will be more attacks on civilian infrastructure and more provocations over here. We've seen an increase in air alerts. We've seen an increase in strikes since that offensive began about 4 days ago. So I do believe that it's extremely important. Ukraine relies very much on Western support, but this is also a testament to another variable, which is the technological advancements of drone warfare.
An important point to make. Journalist Jay Schnell there joining us from Kyiv. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, investigators are trying to work out what caused a plane crash that killed 61 people in Brazil. President Lula has expressed solidarity with the families and friends of the victims, and the Sao Paulo state governor has declared 3 days of mourning. Now, the flight from the city of Cascavel came down on the approach to the international airport in Sao Paulo. There were no injuries on the ground, and our correspondent Ione Wells has the latest.
No time to prepare for landing, only a terrifying spiral to the ground. Just miles short of its destination. Its final moments, captured by horrified onlookers on their phones. This was a short internal flight from the Brazilian state of Paraná to Sao Paulo, never reaching its destination.
It went down nose first. I thought something had happened, that it had run out of gas. I ran out because I live near there.
I thought it was going to fall into our backyard. It was scary, but thank God there was no one killed on the ground.
57 passengers and 4 crew members were on board. Local authorities say there are no survivors. News reached Brazil's President Lula da Silva while he was speaking at a conference. He held a minute's silence. He said all his solidarity was with the families and friends of the victims. There are no answers yet for the friends and families of those on board. Only unimaginable grief and shock. Ione Wells, BBC News in Sao Paulo.
Well, let's go back to our breaking news then. Palestinian sources in Gaza alleging that heavy loss of life after an Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City. We're talking about it here in the studio with Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic. I know that you are tracking the very latest developments. Mohamed, what more are you learning?
The scenes, Helena, the scenes are horrifying that are coming from Gaza, from social media and different outlets. The scenes are horrifying. bodies are everywhere. They cannot move to anywhere. The people who are injured, they cannot get any help. They die in the scenes. The body parts are everywhere. 100 people is a very big number of people to die in a strike, and the injured people are really a lot. Ladies are mourning their loved ones and sitting close to them, crying and grief and agony in the scene. There is no any hospital that can can accommodate this number of injured people or these bodies. People, they do not know where they are, when they can bury these bodies that are spread in that scene in a Daraj area in Gaza. Is a horrifying scene in Gaza this morning, and people are in despair. People are in grief. People are really sad, and people in Gaza want this war to end.
Some very distressing scenes, as you were mentioning there. We know that the Israelis have been insisting their targets were Hamas military bases, but also civilians were sheltering in this school, you understand?
Indeed, we understand that there were more than 5,000 people sheltering in the school. These people will already evacuated the school. They don't know where to go, and this situation is really difficult at the moment.
Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic, thank you very much for bringing us up to date. Well, you are watching BBC News. You can always get the latest on our website. That is bbcnews.com. I'm Helena Humphrey in London. Thanks for your company. More news at the top of the hour. Join me then if you can. Bye for now.